I had a slightly ridiculous reading month. Hey folks, it's Abby, and I don't know how I'm gonna hold all these books. I managed to read 19 books in September. Oh god, they don't fit in the frame. I've got to put them down, got to safely put them down. Oh. Well, they were stacked in order. Like I said, fantastic reading month. 19 books. Still don't know how I managed it. They're now all in a mess on my floor. Oh, let's just dive straight in. First up, the stats. So I read 6,245 pages in September. What the fuck? And that was across 19 different books. Out of those, 2 of those books were non-fiction, 7 of those books were fantasy books, 3 of those books were classics or modern classics, 2 classics, 1 modern classic, and 3 of those books were sci-fi. So let's delve into the books and then see if I managed to balance them out with all the books that I had coming in. The first book that I finished was the Penguin Complete Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I finished this off at the very beginning of September, finishing off the Middle-earth-a-thon. Yes, I read the entire thing in that week. It's ridiculous. Middle-earth-a-thon vlog if you want to see it. This, like I said, is the entire thing. It's got A Study in Scarlet, The Sign of Four, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Valley of Fear, His Last Bow, and The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes. I have a full written review that I will link down below on my blog because it's too much to go through here. Some of them weren't fantastic. I will say my least favourite were The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes and The Valley of Fear, but I did really enjoy some. The Hound of the Baskervilles and A Study in Scarlet are absolute classics, so very, very glad that I finally have finished this one. Where am I even going to put all these? They will not fit. And then on a related note, I read Sherlock Holmes, The Essential Mysteries in one sitting. This is one of the mini running press books that I'm kind of collecting. I've got a few. And this summarises the characters, the main characters that reappear throughout Holmes, as well as some of the key stories and the themes. It was just fun to read after I'd just read this entire thing. I think it's done well. I read the War and Peace one just after I finished War and Peace, so kind of seem to be doing that at the minute. But yeah, I think it's done well. I think it's an interesting little book and one that will refresh the memory or give you a basic overview if you are interested. Then for one of my non-fiction reads, and that is Fake Law by The Secret Barrister. So this is the second book I've read from him. The first one was just self-titled. He is an actual barrister currently working in the UK, and so he is anonymous in order to preserve his job and his identity. This is an absolutely fantastic read. It's so anger-inducing. It's so anger-inducing, but also so incredibly good. It's written really well, really engagingly. I obviously have knowledge of Britain, but I have no knowledge of law. And I feel like he breaks it down in a way that is easy enough to comprehend for us non-law people, but also not to the point where it is going to be boring to those of us who know more about law, whether that's another country's law or if you're a British law student or lawyer. It also primarily delves into kind of how the papers and the news cycle deal with these legal cases and how that misinformation then feeds into the public psyche. Very, very interesting. Love the fact that he titled it Fake Law Like Fake News. 100% will be reading more from The Secret Barrister in the future. I think Truth has just come out and I really want to grab myself a copy of that. Then a big whack of books came in, a mixture of Unholes from Hannah, from letter M, and also books that I purchased from Waypoint Books. Both of those will of course be linked down in the description. Waypoint Books is an independent bookshop where you can grab loads of amazing, diverse reading recommendations. So the first book that I got from Waypoint was Armageddon Outta Here, the definitive story collection so far by Derek Landy. This is, can I get this out? Making a mess. This is the updated version of this, and it matches the grimoire that's in the corner that I'm not getting out because I'm already making a mess. It is a collection of short stories in the Skullduggery Pleasant universe. I've not read it yet. I've already technically read most of the stories in here. I need to double check and see which ones are new to me and which ones are going to be rereads again, because I've read this more than once. But I'm excited for it. Very excited for more Skullduggery stories. And then the other book that I got from Waypoint was they have this service where they will recommend you books. If they don't know you personally already, then they will just kind of ask for some more information about you, books that you've enjoyed and things. Waypoint Books is run by Hannah, so she knows me very well, and so she gave me 3 books that she thought I would be interested in to pick from. And I picked Bluebird by C.L. Piello. said that wrong probably. This book is a sci-fi and the final sentence in the synopsis is Rig's here to be game, do crime and hopefully not die in the process, so always here for that. And then the final book from the Waypoint side of things is that when you've ordered that box, you get sent another book that they think that you will enjoy. And for me, that was Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kajaswal. This is about a woman who is teaching Punjabi widows how to write, I think, and they end up talking about their sexuality, which she did not expect when signing up to do this. It's not what I would usually go for because it's contemporary, but if I do read contemporary, it has to be diverse. Hannah knows this, so hopefully I'll love this. Also, she knows me to a T, so I'm sure it'll be great. And then she was unhauling some books, and so I nabbed 2 from the unhaul pile from her classics. One is All Quiet on the Western Front, which is by Eric Maria Remarque. I've said that wrong. 1914, a room full of German schoolboys, fresh-faced and idealistic. And then the other book is Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, because I want to read it. This is something that I'm really interested in. I love evolution. Okay, back to books that I've read. So, then we have The Throne of Fire, which is the second book in the Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. This is his Egyptian mythology series. This book I really enjoyed. I read The Red Pyramid and found it just kind of eh. I found it eh. And then I read this and I adored it. I don't know what happened. I don't know how. But I'm not complaining about it and I'm very much looking forward to carrying on and finishing off this trilogy, and it's also making me think I might need to pick up Percy Jackson. Then I have my first audiobook for the month, and that is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. Wow, this book is good. This book is so good. So it is a high fantasy book that follows a young girl who is raised by her mother but very isolated in a mansion sort of thing with loads of servants to help her. But her mother is almost never there and these servants aren't supposed to touch her. They're told that they're not allowed to touch her because she will steal their memories. She then is sent off to the royal palace to try and befriend the prince so that she can then murder him for her mother. But she doesn't know any of this and it is just a ride. It is a ride. This was a 4-star read for me. The one negative, the one thing that made it not be a 5-star read is that we are told and not shown that this council of 12, the prince and his 11 councillors, are incredibly close. They can mind link, they are constantly able to talk to each other in their minds, very close, always. Like, if they don't touch each other they get council sickness if they're too far away from each other for too long. And we're shown this in the King's Council, but in the Prince's Council we're very much only told about the 4 primary characters who are actually motivating the plot. Barely learn anything about the other characters whatsoever, couldn't tell you their names, couldn't tell you what they do, couldn't tell you anything about them. That was my only negative of this book. The rest of it, absolutely fantastic. It's beautifully written. I'm so excited to read Redemptor. I'm 100% picking that up. I just wish, beyond wish, that that tiny little issue had been solved. Then back to physical books, and this time I read a modern classic, Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin. So this was gifted to me by Alex from On This Gay Day, who has a fantastic page giving LGBTQ+ facts each and every day. This is an LGBTQ+ modern classic. This was written in the 70s, 80s, written in the 80s I think, and is based in the 60s. Could be utterly bullshitting you. And we follow at the beginning a young woman about my age who moves to San Francisco for the first time away from her parents. And this is just following people. Now, we all know I don't tend to do, I know it's not contemporary because it's set back in time, but I don't do contemporary. We all know I don't do, like, no plot. This has no plot, this is kind of a contemporary, I'm obsessed. Armistead Maupin writes his characters so well. So the author himself is gay. He just does such a fantastic job at writing both the straight and the LGBTQ+ characters. In this book, there's a variety of different races in the characters. The primary characters are white, same as Maupin himself, but a lot of the background characters are people of colour. There is one interesting query that I have that I can't mention because it would spoil something. This was just fantastic. I felt so absorbed and like I cared so much about each and every single one of the characters. I genuinely care where their story goes. I genuinely care about them, and I'm 100% going to be picking up the rest of this 9-book series. When did that happen? This was beautiful. I didn't expect it at all. If you enjoy character-based reads, but you usually wouldn't gravitate towards something like this, I recommend, or at least try out the Netflix series. I haven't watched it, can't vouch for the Netflix series, but it does star Elliot Page, who played Juno. I don't know how to describe it because I don't talk about these sorts of books, but I enjoyed it. Then back onto my more usual vibe, and that is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This was gifted to me by Carrie? Yes, it was. By a Hungarian-American author. This utilises a lot of classic Victorian Gothic fiction and feminises it and fantasises it even further for the modern day. So the main character in this book is Mary Jekyll, the daughter of Dr. Jekyll. This is such a fantastic, fun, ridiculous book. Trying to describe it to my partner and he just looked at me like, what the hell is that? But it's so much fun. I haven't read all of the source materials. I haven't read Rappaccini or Moreau. I need to read both of those, but I've read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I've read Frankenstein, I've read all of the Sherlock Holmes books, and the way that she pulls from those is done so incredibly well. It includes a mystery, if you couldn't tell by the fact that Sherlock and Watson are in this, and I just really enjoy how that's played out, and I also enjoy the narration style. You can see that there's little sections where they are interjecting, and those are the characters from the books interjecting with extra little bits of information and stuff as the book's being written, which I thought was a really fun way to write this. Definitely picking up the rest of these books once I can grab them. Then, a book that I hauled in and then read immediately, and that is my second non-fiction book of the month, and it's I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. So if you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy is Sam Puckett from iCarly, a Nickelodeon TV show that was primarily big in the noughties, and I loved that show a lot. The title, I just knew I needed to pick it up. I've heard some people having issues with the title. I think if you don't have any experience with any sort of trauma yourself, it can be a bit of a divisive title. This is a very, very deep book, quite difficult to read at points. Please do check out the trigger warnings. They're always linked for all of the books down below. Just check the trigger warning list down below for this one, please. Very, very difficult book. I couldn't put it down. The chapters are nice and short, so that keeps you motivated and flowing through the book, and I also enjoyed McCurdy's writing style, personally. I hope that she writes more in the future. I'd be interested in trying out some of her fiction, because I genuinely enjoyed the writing style. And also, if you never watched iCarly, if you never watched anything that Jeanette was in as Sam Puckett, don't worry about that, you don't need to. She explains what you need to know about the show, the like kind of bare minimum, so you know if she's interacting with different cast members and things like that, but you don't need to know about the show to kind of learn more about her and her life. So highly recommend this if you're able to read it. Then a sci-fi book, and that is Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. This was my Goldsborough book for the month. This was another 4-star. It was let down by two things. The first one is that there was not enough dinosaurs. Like, this is like a 500-page book. 450, apologies. And there's like max 100 pages of dinosaurs in here. So that was disappointing. Need more dinos. And then secondly, the ending. It could have ended 50 pages earlier. It was already like a nice solid kind of roundup of an ending, and then Riddle just kind of takes it and wraps it in a pretty little pink bow. I didn't need that, personally. Apart from that, I adored this. It involves time travel, and I think that they handled that as well as you can. I also think that there's kind of a mystery subplot in here. It's like a sci-fi mystery time travel book. I really enjoyed the mystery plot. I think that was done really well. That's what kept me going when I was like, damn it, I want more dinosaurs. I could not put it down. It was so good. It was so good. So yeah, 4 stars because I wanted more dinosaurs and I didn't like the happy-go-lucky ending, but fantastic read. Very tempted to try some more from Riddle now and see how some of his other books are, because oh, this was so good. Then on to another audiobook, and that is Air Awakens by Elise Covey. Awful. Like 1 star, maybe 2. So bad, so bad. This is the most tropey thing I've read in forever. The potential was there. The thing that kept me reading is that the actual plot line has such potential to be so interesting. The magic system that she's building up, the wild concept that she's creating, fantastic. Absolutely ruined by the fact that the entire thing is overshadowed by, oh, does he love me? I don't care. I don't care. That's like the thing that motivates the book, is this girl being like, oh, he's so handsome. Oh no, he's not what I thought. Fuck off. Fuck off. Please, fucketh offeth. Don't care. Oh, it was so frustrating. Every single time we got to something interesting, some sort of magical development, learning more about the world building, learning more about how the magic functions, and then it's ruined by this stupid bloke and this stupid girl. So I didn't like that one, and yet I'm still so intrigued by the magic system that I want to know how the magic system develops. So if anyone's read this series and can tell me if it gets better, please let me know. There's a lot there. There's complex plot structure ingrained in this. It's just ruined. Very frustrating. Then, sticking with the audiobooks, we have No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference by Greta Thunberg. This is a really short audiobook, really short physical book. It's like 100 pages physically. It's like an hour and a half audibly. So Really quick, really easy to read. I don't think it is the best thing to be reading back to back, the scripts of speeches that she read at events such as the UN Council, things like that. So a lot of the points are quite repetitive because of course she's there to say the same thing to all of these different groups of people. However, her point is a fantastic one. Climate change, we're dying, the big corporations and the governments that can actually do anything about it and make any sort of meaningful difference are not doing anything. And it's her just yelling at people, which is mwah, fantastic. My favourite of them all was the very final speech, probably because of bias, because she was specifically talking about the UK and how we distort our facts and figures to make it sound like we're doing a lot better than we are, and when we're not. And so I did enjoy that because it's specifically catering to me and my country. So I did enjoy learning more about that aspect of it. Caitlin, we had a discussion recently, from My Cheshire Rabbit, we had a discussion recently on global warming and everything. I recommend you pick this one up. It'll give you a little bit more of the personal insight into it rather than the science lecture I gave you over Zoom at 11 at night. I swear this woman puts up with me. I think the final audiobook that I read this month is Funny You Should Ask by some of the QI elves. If you don't know, QI stands for Quite Interesting, and it is a TV show that's been on here in the UK for many years now. It used to be run by Stephen Fry, it's now run by Sandy Todsvig. I'm saying that wrong. Both fantastic LGBTQ comedians. Apparently QI has just always been gay. Love it. They get on comedians and then tell them really interesting facts. Quite interesting QI, and it's just them riffing off of it, but then you end up learning loads of stuff. It's great fun. And so this non-fiction book is essentially them telling you interesting little factoids that are also amusing to learn about. I loved the audiobook of this. Whenever anything specifically was trying to be like breaking the fourth wall and mention the book, they changed it, mentioned the audiobook, but then they also had sound effects in the background that matched up with each kind of section of what they're talking about. If they're talking about airplanes, you're gonna hear the flying noise of airplanes, and I really loved the effort that they put in, and it's just a fun little quick read. It's like a 5-hour audiobook, so a lot of fun this one. I'm very glad I read it, and there's a second one and I have it and I will be reading it or listening to it. Then back to some sci-fi, and we have Failure to Communicate by Kaya Sundabi. This is an indie published sci-fi book that is based around an autistic human in a future where autism and any other neurodivergencies and physical disabilities have been genetically tweaked out. There was then a phase for a short time of having natural babies. Her parents are politicians, they were like, oh, we'll go along with this to kind of play to the people. They had her, she's neurodivergent, and they regretted it. And so she's trapped, as you would expect. She ends up as a xenoliaison officer. She's the head of the department, and people always are shocked that she can do it, but she's like, well, I've had to learn to observe the human race to see what the hell they're doing so I can do it with other races too. I was recommended this by 2 autistic readers, which is Becca from the Comic Book Sanctum and Veronica from Veronica's Shelf. Both of those will be linked down below for you to go and check them both out. They recommended this, they said they enjoyed it, and I can see why. I could barely put it down. It was so enjoyable. This is beautiful. If you read Murderbot and you enjoyed it, I think you'll really like Failure to Communicate. Then Olivia was doing an unhaul and decided that she needed to add to my TBR. So we have A Tall History of Sugar by Cardella Forbes. This book is set in the 1950s, 4 years before Jamaica's independence from colonial rule, and it follows a boy who's got bluish translucent skin, and that sets him apart from the rest of the community. Very interested in reading this one, and the cover's stunning. And then speaking of stunning covers, the other book that she sent through was Thrust by Lydia Yuknovich. And this one, I adore the little turtle on the back. Another time travel-y one, and it's also really pretty. So very excited to read both of these. Thank you, Olivia. Then for another sci-fi read, but this time in the dystopian genre, and that is Raging Star, the 3rd book in the Dustlands trilogy, with the first one being Blood Red Road by Moira Young. We are following the main character Saba. In the first book, she is travelling the Dustlands trying to get back her twin brother who was stolen by the Tauntaun. These are the evil, overlordy sort of people in this world. I obviously can't tell you what this one's about, but it is the 3rd and final book in the dystopian trilogy, and unfortunately it was a pretty big disappointment. If this had been the first book that I was picking up, then I would have DNF'd it. I was only reading it because it was the final book in the trilogy and I finally wanted to finish it. The concept that was utilised for the plot in this was really well done, but for some reason the writing wasn't, and I just could not find it in myself to give a damn. So this was a big shame, unfortunately. Then a sci-fi fantasy blend, and that is The Never Tilting World by Rin Chupeco, gifted to me by Carrie, thank you. This is a world where half of it is frozen and half of it is burning hot because the Earth stopped rotating, and so the sun isn't evenly heating the entire thing. It's like a microwave, it's got a hot spot. This was a really good book. I struggled to put it down. I was so invested in both points of views. So we get some points of views from the hot side and some from the cold side. My only issue with the book in terms of those different points of views is that it distinguishes between the hot and the cold by either having a sun or a moon. But there's two different points of view in each of those that it could be, and it doesn't tell you what it is. You just have to figure it out by reading it, which was annoying. Like, it was just frustrating. But apart from that, I adored this. The magic system in this is incredibly interesting. I adored learning about how these people had adapted to survive in a sunless and a completely besunned environment. I'm definitely reading the second book in this duology. I really want to see how things progress from here because of all the lies that the main characters had been told by their parents. I can understand why Carrie recommended this one because it's just an absolutely fantastic read. Could barely put it down. Then for another one that I couldn't put down, so much so that I read this in one day, and that is The Cat Who Saved Books by Susuke Natsukawa. This is the final book out of the 4 cat books, traditional Japanese translated cat books that my partner got me this past Christmas. So first I read I Am a Cat, then The Guest Cat, The Travelling Cat Chronicles, and finally The Cat Who Saved Books. This is the most fantastical of them all. The other ones, some could be argued to be slightly fantastical, but they could also all be argued to be contemporary. This one is definitively fantastical in a different manner to the others, but I still loved it. There's a cat who comes in to this young boy who's recently lost his grandfather who'd been running the bookshop that they lived in. And this cat comes to him and speaks to him and takes him into another world because he needs him to come and help him to save books. It uses the kind of 4 labyrinths myth and utilises that. It's very much kind of calling you out for not just enjoying books for the sake of the books, but also done really beautifully. I really enjoyed it. I'm very glad I read it. We're near the end here, finally. So I picked up Bitter by Akwaeke Emezi. This is the prequel to Pet by the same author, and this one instead follows Pet's mother, Bitter. Not Pet's mother, Jam's mother. Pet is not the mother. Christ, can you imagine? Follows Jam's mother, Bitter. So in Pet, we are told that we're living in a utopian society and that so many different things have changed, and then things aren't quite right. There's a little hiccup, shall we say, of someone being a bad person, and events conspire to remove that person. But it turns out that those events were basically a smaller version of what had happened in the past to trigger this utopia coming into existence. And it was done by her mother. And this tells us the story of that. Her mother's an artist and her art can come to life. It's an absolutely beautiful story. When I read it, I read one specific character and I couldn't remember the name of them in Pet, because obviously a lot of the teenagers in here then become the adults present in Pet. And I read from this character and I was like, you're the bad person in Pet, aren't you? You are the bad person in Pet. They were. I knew it, they were. So I would personally recommend reading Pet and then this one. Otherwise, it will be slightly more obvious. It's an absolutely stunning book. Gorgeous. I didn't love it quite as much as Pet, and I don't know why. I think I just really enjoyed reading from that younger point of view for this style of story. But this was a beautiful book nonetheless, and I'm so glad I read it. I think this was gifted to me by Olivia. Am I talking out my ass? I am talking out my ass. It was not gifted to me by Olivia. I bought it from Waypoint Books. Oh god, okay. A book that was gifted to me by Olivia is My Name is Monster by Katie Hale. She was unhauling this one and so I took the opportunity to grab it. This is set in a world after the sickness. They are the only person left alive and their name is Monster. So you start out with them a little bit beforehand, learning about their childhood, and then you go into them surviving afterwards. This is a very interesting book. It's written in really short little chapters, all about survival, all about humanity, and I think it's just a really nicely done book. I had expected it to be different from what it was. That doesn't mean it's bad, I just had not expected how it developed. So that was really interesting to read. And then we're at the final book, which I didn't finish until this morning. So if you were listening, that's on the 1st of October, so I've read most of it in September, so I'm going to mention it, and then I'll mention it in October as well. And that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I finally finished it this morning, and wow, this book. I don't think I'll stop thinking about this one for a while. This is a book that is set in 1800s Oxford, UK, and we follow people in the Tower of Babel in Oxford, which is a translation institute. This institute likes to gain a lot of their non-European students by stealing them away from their families through one method or another, bringing them to the UK, raising them to be proper English gentlemen or women, and then bringing them into Babel and giving them a lot of privileges that they wouldn't have had otherwise to tie their loyalty to Babel and to Oxford and to Britain, so that they continue helping them to expand the empire. Babel, 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 Babel. I don't want to say too much about this because I feel like going in just knowing just about that and nothing more just sets you up to really enjoying this. It is an incredibly slow read. I haven't read something this slowly in a while that wasn't like a classic, but it's beautifully done. I didn't want to put it down. Like, it was so slow but so enjoyable at the same time. I don't know if that's just dark academia or this is my first time properly delving into it, who knows. But yes, so I really, really loved this. I hate a specific character. They can fucking jump in the sea. I'm not telling you who, because it's a spoiler, but they can jump in the sea. If you've read it, you know exactly who I mean. This has so many different events in it, so many different angles of things to look at. It was just done so well. The magic is so interesting. I love that concept. Oh god, I wish it was real. It's beautifully done. It's a beautifully written book. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited to read the Poppy War now. It's worth the hype in my opinion. I can see why everyone hyped it up. It is just beautifully done. I mean, obviously I also have the gorgeous Illumicrate edition, which helps. Yeah. I'll mention it again in October because I finished it then, but it's so good. It's so good. Now for the balancing of the books. I can't include Babel because I read it, like I finished it in October. That's really annoying. October and December do not count. It would have been handy to have a book count. So I started out this month with 107 books on my TBR, which leaves my TBR at 101 books. If I'd finished Babel last night, it would have been 100. That would have been so good. But I didn't. And I know that I'm gonna get 1,000,001 books in October. So at least I got it to almost 100 before it shoots up again. Christ. If you're wondering how balancing the books is going to work next month, essentially I won't be punished for not balancing out the books, which is what usually happens. I usually have to unhaul books from my TBR to get those all balanced out. I won't have to do that in October nor in December. It's my birthday in October, FYI. It's a pity I couldn't have finished Babel a bit sooner. But let me know, what was the best book that you read in September? I can't choose. I read so much that I had a lot of very good reads. I don't know how I managed it. I'm not complaining. So yeah, let me know down in the comments if you had a favourite book of this month. If you'd like to see if I managed to not completely murder my own TBR in October, then please do hit subscribe to see how I end up doing with my reads next month. If you enjoyed the video, please do hit like to let YouTube know that you enjoyed it, or dislike to let YouTube know that you didn't enjoy it, and I'll catch you folks in the next one. Bye!